Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining the session. Today's session is the part 3 of the webinar series on how to plan your PhD research, how to plan your PhD. And today I'm going to talk about what you should do in year 3 of your PhD. Okay, so that is the main plan for today's webinar. For those who may be watching this session later on, or the recorded version of this session on my channel, I would like to tell you that this webinar is a 3-part series. Today I'm running the 3rd session. But there was a session that I conducted on the 21st January, which was on how to plan your PhD in year 2. So I suggest you look at that webinar as well, or look at these videos in that series, in that order, because it will make more sense that way. The link to the link is in the video description, so you could check that out in the YouTube video description. So this is the year 1, how to plan your PhD in year 1. And this was year 2. So do check out those links and see the videos in that order. All right. So for those who may be joining me for the first time, either on my webinar or visiting my YouTube channel, I'd like to give a brief background about myself. My name is Vidy. I'm an associate professor here based in Australia. So far, I have published over 150 research papers. You can check out my Google Scholar profile here. And I have supervised over 15 PhD students. So over this time frame, and in this with this experience, I have seen what is it that normally or where do normally PhD students struggle. So that was the purpose for starting this webinar series, to give you some guidance on how you can effectively plan your PhD. I also have a number of other videos on my YouTube channel, so do check them out, and please subscribe to my channel, because that helps me and keeps me motivated to bring new videos for you. So the link is at the bottom here. Early this week, on the 25th Jan, I conducted a 4-hour webinar on systematic literature review methodology. So if you are starting your PhD, or if you are in the 1st or 2nd year of your PhD, I suggest you have a look at this webinar as well. The link is in the video description. Basically, it will take you through the steps required to complete your systematic literature review paper. So I also do a course on on writing systematic literature review. Many of you may have done the course, or you might have seen some of the uh, trailer videos that I have put on my YouTube channel. I'm running another session or another batch of this course in from the 9th of February to 12th of March, 5 weeks and 10 sessions. And I have called it how to write your systematic literature review paper in 5 weeks. So if you're interested in this course, do register. The registration link is in the YouTube description below. And this course is quite thorough and exhaustive because I take you through each and every step of writing systematic literature reviews. And as you can see here, there are over 21 videos that handle each and every aspect of writing a systematic review. Also, do check out the reviews. I have recently started this, requesting reviews from my viewers and from my course participants. Do check them out, and I thank them all for taking the time to write these reviews. So even you all, after the session today, I would appreciate if you could leave me even a short review of your experience, and if there is anything that you would like me to cover. All right, so let's get into the core of year 3. What is it that we plan on doing in this year? Where should be your focus? Where should your focus be? And what is it that you need to do to make sure that you are successful in completing your PhD in the last year? All right. So even last in the session 2, I asked you again, how many of these apps have you installed during from the time we started this course? The reason I'm showing this again is I want you to know the importance of having these apps handy. It is going to help you to make your research more productive. You will be more productive. You will be more your outcomes will be much better if you have all these different tools ready for use. So if you have not still downloaded these tools or installed these, please do so. So this is a second reminder. I hope that you can go take on board all these tools, at least those that are freely available. Please do start using those. All right, so today we are going to do a class activity towards the end of the session, but I have kept this slide here to show that anyone who has not registered on the Kaggle website, please do so now. The details are there in the YouTube video link description, so that by the time we start the class activity, you all have access to the mind map that we are developing for the 3 years of your PhD activities. So do check that out and do register if you have not done so. So you need to create an account firstly on kaggle.it, and you have to fill up this form. That will basically this form is just to get your email address. So I have to invite you to the Kaggle board. So just do this before we start the class activity. All right, so time flies. I think this is what I mentioned last time as well. The first 2 years of your PhD have finished. You are now in your third and your final year. So planning is really, really important. And like I covered in the first session and even in the second session, the importance of planning and the importance of what activities you should do and in what order, and coming up with that entire detailed plan, I think is very important and is very essential for your success in your PhD program. So keep that in mind. Time will really go fast once you're in PhD, and you will realize, you will think, where did it go? What did I do? So if you have a proper plan, you at least know this is what you have listed that you wanted to do, and this is what you have achieved. Okay, so let's begin with what you should do in year 3. First of all, on on most occasions, the PhD students will be spending fair bit of time in the year 3 for writing their thesis. But if you follow the plan that I have suggested, it would be better that you gradually start writing your thesis from year 1, year 2 itself. And there are some things that you can write during these years. So don't believe or don't imagine that the thesis writing task only has to be done in the last year. So it's not the case. You can start structuring your thesis chapters, and any content that you think is relevant can be added. But for year 3, that is one of the major activities or major tasks that you would do. So which is why I have said that continue with your writing with your PhD thesis. On some occasions, it may be possible or it may happen that you have still not completed your research or your results, or you have not gathered your data or collected or analyzed your data. So do that. Continue working on your research in the year 3, but at the same time, make sure that you keep sufficient time for your research, for your PhD thesis writing, if you're writing the thesis. So do check that out. Like I mentioned in my previous video, that if you do not, for some universities, there is an option that you just submit your PhD by PhD by publications, in which case you do not need to write a thesis. But if you do have to write a thesis, do keep in mind that you have to have you keep sufficient time for yourself to do that activity. All right. If you have submitted any research papers for review, like we discussed like I discussed in the last session, if you have a publication plan, and if you're following that publication plan, you should have submitted a few papers for review during your year 2 or even year 1. And normally for top journals, it may take some time. You may have to go through a number of revisions, iterations for your paper before it gets accepted. So revising and resubmitting is an activity that is an ongoing activity. So you have to allocate some time to do this as well. And it is ideal that you get at least 3-4 papers published during your thesis, so that when you're writing your thesis, you can in fact say that the findings from this chapter are reported in this publication. You can put the citation, you can put the complete details of the paper if it is published, or if it is accepted. Towards the end, it may also happen that you have some papers that are ready or under review. So in your thesis chapter, you can mention that these papers are currently under review. The next thing that you can also do is attend conferences. And the benefit of attending a conference is that it gives you an opportunity to present your work, and it could be like a rehearsal for your defense. So if your university or if your country, the PhD requirement is that you need to defend your thesis, this is a very good practice that you can do at conferences, because you will be presenting to an audience, to expert audience in that field, and their questions or their line of questioning could be important to assess what you may expect during your viva or your defense. So keep that in mind as well. Another thing that I mentioned in the last in the webinar 2 was to look for the positions or academic positions that you want to probably apply after you have completed your PhD. So it could either be a postdoc position that you want to apply, or it could be directly an academic position that you can apply. So depending upon your profile, depending upon your publication track record, this may be a easy or maybe a challenging task. So keep that in mind. Look for what are the requirements for preparing a post for applying for a postdoc position. Uh, are there specific time that there are calls that are made for expression of interest to join a postdoctoral fellowship? So keep that in mind. Also, start collecting as much information as possible that is required, that may be required for applying for a postdoc. And in doing so, what you might also need is, when you apply for a postdoc position or a research fellow position, you would be expected to submit a research proposal, a very detailed research proposal on what is it that you are planning to do if you are selected for this position. So coming up with that proposal is also a equally time consuming and a challenging task. So you do have to keep that in mind and prepare for that as well. I have seen on many occasions the smart PhD students will plan their time properly, and they would use their future work section of their thesis to be the core plan for their postdoctoral fellowship. So keep that in mind. So writing the future work section of your thesis is also a step for what you would plan to do during your postdoctoral fellowship. So that is also one way to plan ahead. Another thing is to build experience. Like this is in line with what I just mentioned, that after your PhD, if you're looking for an academic position, there is some things that you would need to have experience in. So one is probably the ability to do some teaching. And if you have done that during your PhD, you can tick that box. Similarly, if you have supervised undergraduate students or a master's students during your PhD, that is a sign of your capability to do supervision. So start collecting all such information and start amending or adding to your CV and start building up your CV. If you recall, I think in webinar 1, I did mention that you have to start compiling your CV from year 1, and as you progress, as the activities that you do, those could be added to your CV. So that way it's you don't miss out on anything, you don't forget anything. So you will have a complete CV that ready for when you decide to apply for a position. And during this time, follow a routine. It may be that the last year of your PhD, your focus is heavily on writing because you want to get your PhD thesis written, or you want to get your publications written. So prepare a plan, follow a routine to ensure that you do not to ensure that you follow the plan that you have in mind. There are some other things that you also should do. Firstly, find out what is the process for submitting your thesis. What are there any milestones that you have to meet? Are there any formal activities that you have to complete before you can submit your thesis? So check out the policy from your university and see what is required to prepare for submission or for submission of the of your thesis. So that is also will take some time. Find a proofreader. This is especially important if English is not your first language and your thesis is to be submitted in English, or if your thesis is to be submitted in any other language other than your native language. So proofreaders can be busy, especially those that are experienced in academic proofreading. They can be busy, so you might have to take a slot from their time that you would be submitting your thesis for proofreading, maybe on, say, September of the last year of your thesis, of your final year, so, or something like that. So keep them informed and because that will be helpful for you to plan your thesis completion as well. So if you know that you have to submit your complete thesis for proofreading by end of September becomes your deadline for you to complete your thesis. Yeah. So keep that in mind and block their time. During the session year 3, I would also suggest you write more. And like I mentioned earlier already, that you would be spending more time writing and less time on reading. If you find that you are in a situation where you're struggling with completing your PhD, or maybe one of the research question that you had planned, you just feel that no, it's not possible to complete that, then look at that research question from a minimum viable point of view. So if the research question was too broad or too broad, then maybe you want to think that what is it that you can achieve. If you cannot achieve the complete that research question, is there anything else or anything that you can scale down, a scaled down version of your research question? Would that be possible? And then you can do that, because I have seen that happen on many occasions. Write grant applications. Like I said, when you are preparing for your research fellowship or a postdoctoral fellowship, you have to write a research proposal. I think that research proposal can be so applying for a postdoc fellowship is like applying for a grant, because you are securing funds, that is your salary, to work on a research that you are proposing. So coming up with the research proposal and applying for the research grant is part of the academic activities. So you should start thinking and start doing it from the last year of your PhD. You could also train or mentor bachelor, master's, or PhD, or young or PhD students from the who have just started. So that all adds up to your CV to show that you are capable of managing PhDs, or managing supervision duties, and that would be one of the criteria for any academic position that you would be looking for. All right. So if you think that you are not able to catch up with the stipulated time for completion of your PhD, there may be policies that allow you to apply for an extension for completion. So do check that out. And this could probably be the thing that you should also look for when you're looking for this thesis submission process. So if you know that submission is required to be done on the third year, or the third year, or just after third year of your PhD, there may be also some application forms that you may have to fill to apply for extension. So do check that out if you think you will be in that situation. Allocate time for your supervisor to provide feedback. So I will talk about this a bit later in today's session as well, where I'll show you an example. So what I suggest is, what I want to recommend you is, your supervisor could be busy. Yeah, so you cannot expect that the moment you submit your first chapter, or the first draft of your chapter, your supervisor is immediately going to start reading it. So they may have some other tasks, other duties, other activities that they have planned. So they would have to slot in your thesis reading task. So keep a good amount of time for that to happen. So ideally 3 to 4 months is a good amount of time to get feedback back and forth, to complete your writing and feedback. Remember that there will be multiple drafts. So it is not just one submission that you do to your supervisor and that gets accepted and submission happens. There will definitely be multiple versions of your thesis chapters. And finally, I think you should also start preparing for your defense, or if it is a final presentation or a viva. Different universities have different policies or procedures around this. So do check out what is the requirement for your university and start preparing for that as well. Okay. So the next bit that I want to talk today is plan how to plan your thesis writing. Okay. So probably the majority of the time you'll be spent on thesis writing, editing, revising, and proofreading. Yeah, so the majority of activities in the year 3 around the thesis writing will be these. So it is always advisable to plan your writing effectively. Yeah, so the first thing is you could prepare a chapter by chapter layout. So what I did during my PhD, I used LaTeX to format my PhD thesis. So I had different LaTeX files for each chapter. It was just easy to manage, and I think you can similarly you can do that in Word as well. Chapter 1, chapter 2, all your chapters could be separate uh, documents, and later you can merge it. Otherwise it can be that it may be a bit too difficult to manage the chapters if there are manage the document if it is a very large document. So chapter by chapter is the suggested way to manage your writing. uh, Also build a detailed table of contents section by section. So if you know what you need to write, it is much easier to write it rather than you sit and then start thinking, what should I write now? So coming up with a chapter by chapter and a section and subsection plan for your thesis is probably the most important part, because it will keep you on track, because you know what is it that you need to do. Assign a date to work on a specific section and assign an expected word limit for each of that section. So if you see, I have created a template. You can download that from the link in the YouTube description, and I will show you that now. But something, this is a very simple one, but you can it gives you a good starting point to start thinking about your writing. So what do we have here? So what I have done is I have got chapter 1 to chapter 8, and this could be different for you. It could be chapters, only 7 chapters, or it could be 10 chapters, depending upon your research. I have planned a schedule here. Say I will be working on chapter 1 from 1st January till 14th January. Chapter 2, another 15 days. Chapter 3, another 15 days, and so on. So I have kind of put 15 days for each chapter to work. And I have, for the task, I have said that send for review to supervisor. So you finish your chapter 1 on, say, 14th. Feedback, oh, sorry, there's a mistake here. If you start it on 1st and finish it on the 15th, you can expect the feedback you will receive from on the 1st of February. Okay, that is, so you can also inform your supervisor that that is what you are expecting, so that you can stick to your timeline and complete with your write-up. So do come up with something like this. So this is for the first draft. For the second draft, what I have done is I have reduced the time to 1 week. So instead of 2 weeks for the writing, now you have 1 week in the second draft. It might even take you a bit less, depending upon how much feedback you receive from your supervisor. Okay, so do download this template. It will be handy for you to use, or you can create something similar by looking at this one. Okay, Vidya, your question about formatting being an issue if you do chapter by chapter. Yes, so as long as you follow the same format. So what I would normally do is I will write, say, chapter 1, and then I will save as and make another file which is chapter 2. So the formatting can be will be followed into the next chapter. So that worked. I mean, it worked that way. Kaflina, LaTeX versus Word, which one is better for thesis writing? If your thesis involves a lot of equations, mathematical formula, then I would strongly suggest using LaTeX. If it is not, then I think either of them works fine. But LaTeX does give a very nice look and feel when you have equations in your research. All right. So the next thing that you can see here now is a schedule for your section and subsection. Yeah. So here I have written, say, this is for detailed plan for chapter 1. I've got section 1.1 is introduction. This section does not have any subsection. Then you have another column that says progress. So you can say what is the progress so far on this chapter or on this section. So I could say I have completed this on the 1st of January. Similarly, you can have another section and then a progress on that. Third section. So in this, there are, say, 2 subsections. So either you can keep, depending upon how much or how long you need to write, you can change the date here. But here I have kept the same date for section 1.3. So 1 day to write this section. There will be 2 subsections, and this the subsection title would depend upon what you will depend upon your research. Now, similarly, subsection 4th subsection section, and then these subsections underneath. So research questions, research methodology, depending upon what methodologies you are going to use in your research, you can mention those here, that these are the methodologies that you will be using. Research significance, a few days for writing that. Theoretical significance, practical, social, environmental, and so on. So this is also an important section. A section on ethical considerations, your research contributions, your thesis structure, and your thesis summary. Okay, so this is a kind of a layout for chapter 1. I mean, there could be some more things that you could add, and there could be some things that you could remove. But more or less, some of the standard headings in your introduction chapter would be something like this. So I suggest you can follow, come up with a plan like this, and discuss this with your supervisor. So you may need help in deciding the schedule, how long it would take to write this section, and your supervisor would be in a very good position to guide you or to advise you on what is the practical time that they think would be required to write something like this. So yeah, that's one thing that you could do. And similarly, prepare a plan like this and stick to that plan. Sometimes what may happen is that you do come up with a plan and you're not able to stick to it. So doesn't mean that you cannot follow it. It may be that your estimation of the efforts required for completing the task were probably not correct. So you might go back and either change this or mention it in your progress bar as to where do you stand at the moment in terms of on your progress. But do have a plan like this for your thesis writing. And even you could have a plan like this even for your daily activities of your during all the years of your PhD program. Okay, so the next thing is decide tables and figures. It would also be useful to come up with a plan of what all different tables or figures you would be drawing in your chapter, and keep that in mind, and also in your plan that this is what I need to do for my for my thesis tables and figures. Decide what referencing style you are going to use. So some universities may specify that you have to use a specific referencing format. But if there is no such restrictions, just choose one formatting style and be consistent with that throughout your thesis. Write an introduction and a summary section for each chapter. I think this is a very important part to keep in mind. So a summary section, introductory section could be okay. So the introductory section could be giving the reader a outline or a layout of what they can expect in this chapter. So it could be that in this chapter, I am going to talk about the following things. So you can either make it like a dot points, so it is very clear and crisp, or you can write it as in a paragraph format. Okay, but start every chapter with a introductory section, and then so it is like a structure for your chapter, so the reader can know what to expect when they are reading your thesis. The next thing is decide whether you will have references after each chapter or at the end of the thesis. So there may be guidelines, your university guidelines, that stipulate either way. So either end of the chapter or at the end of the thesis. So if it is at the end of the chapter, it makes it much easier to manage multiple files. Like I said, chapter 1, chapter 2, each are different Word documents or LaTeX files. It is much easier to manage that way if it is references are allowed at the end of each chapter. But if the references are not allowed at the end of each chapter, you can still manage it that way. In the end, when you compile or combine all the files, as long as you have properly formatted your references, once you add it to Word, for example, there is using Zotero or in EndNote, you can easily combine all the references and make one reference list at the end. You can also plan how or what software you're going to draw the figures and write when you write your thesis. So what software you're going to use for drawing and what software you're going to use for writing your thesis. Okay, so depending upon your preference or your interest, you can, or your skills, you may be comfortable using some kind of a software already, so you might just want to continue using that. But if you are thinking of trialing a new software, then like I said, in the list of apps that I had shown at the start of the this session as well, you could add that or start learning that software, because you would need it at the end when you are going to write your thesis. Okay, so this now brings us to the class activity. What I want you all to do today in the class activity is to spend time and think about the activities that you want to do for year 2 and for year 3. And I have formatted the Kaggle mind map based upon each month for year 2 and year 3. So add activities to those branches, and don't move those main branches. Otherwise, it will all again become jumbled up like last time. So just add new categories or add new tabs, but don't move the month tabs that I have created. So all those who have accessed it already, you would not need new access, so you can directly log into Kaggle and start editing it. For those who have joined first time or registered first time, I will now look at your email addresses and I will send the invites now. So when I send out the invites, please do check that sometime that invite might go to your spam mail or some other folder. So do check that, and if you cannot find it, just message me here and I will check it out. Okay, so I've sent out emails to those who have filled up the Google form. Total 10 people so far have added there. So do check your email address. Do check your email now and see if you have received the email. Okay, are you all able to see this? If you have logged in, you should be able to see uh, year three and year two. Hi, Evelyn or Harshit. Can you hear now? I just kept myself mute so that when I type, it does not get any sound on the to all of you. So we are working on the research plan, PhD plan. So if you can start adding some activities that you think that you want to do, that you plan to do during this time, please start adding it, because I hope that this becomes a plan that will help a lot other every PhD student during their PhD. If you are having trouble uh, logging into Kaggle, do let me know, because I don't see many people editing it right now. Kavita, if you have registered last time, you just need to log in. I don't need to send you the invitation again. Evelyn, did you send me your email to, because I need to add you to Kaggle so that you can edit it as well. So do send me your email and I will add you to the map. It's good to see that quite a lot of you have started adding to Kaggle. And if we just do that, I think we'll get a really thorough plan for everyone to follow. I can see all of you have started adding, and the plan is improving quite a lot. So, at the beginning of the session, there was hardly anything other than January to December that I had listed. But now you can see the collective effort of all of us has kind of helped us build this plan that everyone can benefit from. So, thank you all very much. Please continue working on this and add anything that you think uh, would be useful and important in this to make this a very thorough plan. All right. So I think we'll spend another 5 more minutes on this plan, and once after 5 minutes, I will go through all these suggestions that you have made, so that we can discuss it and all of us can explore and learn from this. So 5 more minutes, and we will start looking into it, looking into the year 3 plan. Okay, so should we begin? I would like to go through this plan that you all have done and see whether we can make any changes or uh, it is all good. So I'm going to start off with January. So what do we have in January? So plan to submit a paper. Okay, that's a good plan. Journal paper editing, writing exam. Not sure what exam this is. So whoever has written that, maybe you can elaborate that a bit. Booking a dedication person for proofreading the thesis. Booking a dedicated person for proofreading of the thesis. That's good. Continue experiment with data collection, creating contents page, creating content page with chapter headings and subheadings, list of figures and tables. Okay. Writing first draft of introduction and prior literature. To supervisor for review. Okay, so you're going to send the first introduction and the prior literature to the supervisor for review. Plan to submit a paper. Okay, what do we have here? Okay, so that is the activities for January. So that looks like a good set of that looks like a good set of tasks that you would want to complete in the first month of your PhD, of the third year of your PhD. Okay, let's see in February what you have suggested. So we have writing first draft of the methodology, creating figures and tables. Can get rid of this. Creating figures and tables, and okay, let's do it this way. This looks organized. So continue experiments and planning for writing the first draft, creating figures and tables for your thesis. So that's February. March, what have we got in March? Analysis, analyze results from simulation iterations. From simulation iterations, or you can say if you're doing data collection, data analysis. If you're not using simulations, you may be doing data analysis. Writing first draft, results and discussion, type up figures and tables format, writing initial or figure out chapters and contents. Okay, so basically trying to figure out, thinking of what content should be planned for each chapter and each section. So in fact, the one that I showed you today to prepare the section and subsection, you can even go a step further. I did not cover it today. Maybe I'll run another session sometime later on that topic, is how can you structure the logic or the content of the content that you want to write. For example, if your subsection is research questions, so you first, and there are 3 research questions. So how you are going to write the content for the research questions. You can also come up with a plan for that, a structure for that. And once you have the structure, then you know what is it that you want to write. So I like to do that very often. So if you remember, I taught you in the on one of my first webinars on do uh, how to do write a systematic literature review paper. In the webinar, I covered about how you can write the structured abstract. So abstract could have been a paragraph, but we then, in a structured abstract, we decide that a paragraph abstract can be divided into 5 or 6 different uh, components. So it could be the background, it is the methodology, the results, and so on and so forth. So basically, what we are doing there is we are breaking down a paragraph into sub ideas or sub concepts that you can then write about. So it becomes even easier for you for your writing. So you can go to that level of detail as well. I just now saw this message from Vinu. Stress-free PhD. Is this real life or is this a fantasy? So it might feel as a fantasy, but my attempt is to make it real life. So which is the reason I am doing these sessions. So you can say my goal is to make PhD enjoyable experience, not a stressful part of your life. So if it does feel fantasy at this stage, we know. I hope I can change that and make it reality. But thanks for the comments. Appreciate that. Okay, April. Discuss with supervisor. Write first draft of the conclusion chapter to supervisor for review. More writing on draft chapters. Submit section of the thesis for a journal. That's a good plan for April. Month of May, planning to write a paper. Okay, submitting the completed first draft to supervisor, attend a conference. Okay, that's some good tasks that you can do in May. June, what do we have in June? Work on the second draft, chapter 1 and 2, attend a conference, work on the feedback from first draft. That's nice. July, work on the second draft, chapter 3 and 4, planning for the next chapter, initial draft. Maybe you can mention which chapter number. Thanks, Paula. August, work on second draft, plan to attend a conference, discussion with the supervisor. September, work on the third draft, work on second draft, chapter 7 and 8, final version of your thesis ready to be sent for proofreading. October, okay, what do we have in October? Discussion with supervisor and attending a conference, submitting a completed second draft to proofreading and to supervisor. Read it carefully and thoroughly to ensure the proofreader has not changed the meaning of some sentences. Okay, so this is the comment that I had put here, the task, which is when you submit your paper, when you submit a thesis for proofreading, it may happen that sometimes the proofreader does not understand what you're trying to say because they're not from your discipline, and they may try to fix the sentence, but it ends up being changing the meaning of that sentence. So it is strongly advisable that when you receive your completed proofread thesis, you read it thoroughly in sentence by sentence to ensure that none of the changes made by the proofreader are actually uh, do actually make sense. So if there are any errors in their understanding, I think you should read it and resolve it. October, November, submit a paper for review, initial draft of a paper. December, submit another paper, submit final thesis, party time, attend a conference and submit. So more or less, I think the activities that have come up uh, from this plan, uh, I guess will guide you on selecting or planning up, coming up with your own detailed and a thorough plan. Yeah, so this is, I think I already covered this. I said that you have to be mindful of your supervisor's time as well. They are busy people, they have probably teaching duties, they would have research targets and supervision of the other PhD students. So, getting a slot in their diary, I think it is important for you, and you should take that well in advance. So you should make it clear that or inform your supervisor that I'm planning to complete my first draft of chapter 1, and I will send it to you by this and this date. I hope you can reserve a slot in your calendar, in your diary, for my chapter to be reviewed and sent back. So you need some advanced planning for this. And planning becomes important because if you have given a word to your supervisor that you will send the thesis by this date, and they have blocked a time in their calendar, but then it happens that you are not able to send it or you are delayed, then it will be a problem. So try to get in touch with your supervisor and get a slot in their calendar. Make sure that, and also make sure that you can complete the draft that you have planned. So which is why I think going to the second stage of structuring the what you want to write in each section is also important before starting to write that section. Paula, you ask, is there any core activity that is very important for the third year student? I think if your research is completed, I mean, you have collected your data, you have built your model, you have developed your algorithm or a protocol, whatever your core research is, if you have completed that by end of year 2, I think, and in third year, the core activity is to kind of collect all this information, collect all your research, and finish writing your thesis. But if for some reason your progress has been delayed, maybe you could not get the sufficient data that you wanted for your research, or the interviews that you had planned did not go as per your expectations, or the findings from the interviews or from your survey do not meet some statistical tests. These challenges can come up during your research, and then part of the year 3 could be allocated or assigned to address these challenges during your PhD. But otherwise, completing your PhD, and I had students who had finished their research by year 2, and in the first half of year 3, they focused on writing their PhD, writing their thesis. So I don't see there is anything major core activity other than if you are delayed in your research progress. Yusuf, can we publish data collection, analysis, and results separately? I would not recommend publishing 3 separate papers from one study, because all the studies would then be incomplete. and a good journal would ideally want a complete paper, which is starting from the problem definition to your methodology, your data collection, your findings, and your insights or discussion. So that has to be there in a complete paper. Many a times, some good journals would not even, would want even more studies, more multiple studies covered in a journal to be accepted in their journal. So it might be that you might have to come up with two or three studies, depending upon what your research is, and combine them to get it in one good quality journal. So I would suggest not to split your paper into data collection, analysis, and results separately, because it would be incomplete, and it does not reflect very well on you as a researcher. People would feel that you have just sliced and diced your research to get more publications. Although it does happen, like I have seen that. Yeah, I agree with Yusuf here. I think the third year is probably finishing off your thesis as soon as you can. Give enough time for your supervisor to provide you feedback. Incorporate, keep yourself some time to incorporate the feedback, get it proofread, and submit. I think the earlier you can achieve all this in the third year, the better. And then you can spend the rest of the time in for converting or transforming your research chapters into thesis into research papers. Or if you're looking, or if you're thinking of applying for a position, academic position or a postdoc position, you can work towards that. But that is, I think, that is what all is the core activities that you would do in year 3. Are there any other questions? Okay, so if there are no further questions, we can, I think, I didn't, that is all I had to cover in the last session. Let me see what is my next slide. Okay. So this is what I wanted to show you. I mean, we didn't get to work on the plan for year 2, but I suggest if you are available now, free now, you can add some activities that you could do in year 2. It will help you as well in the planning process. And this is what was the this is what was the plan for year 3 when we started the session today. But now you can see how that plan has evolved by our efforts, by our joint efforts in getting, in exploring how to best do your PhD, or how to best plan your PhD in this course. Okay, so if you need any further professional guidance to plan your PhD, do get in touch with me at my email address, contact@vidypotdar.com, and I'll see how I can help you in formulating your research plan. Uh, on that note, I think I would say thank you very much for joining this session. If you have attended, if you have attended all the three sessions, I guess you would have learned something new, something useful that can help you in your PhD program, in your PhD journey. I would appreciate if you could spare a few minutes and leave some feedback for me on this website. And if there is anything you want me to work, plan some new sessions, or if you want something to learn something new, and if I could teach that, please do give me some suggestions as well, because that will help me to plan something that will be value for you all. Okay, Vidya, have you made a video on thesis writing chapters, a breakup of structure like you had mentioned, for breakup of sentences for abstract? Okay, Vidya, no, I have not made a video on that topic yet, but having now that I think about it, it might be a interesting series that I probably should plan, where which would be useful for year three PhDs, that would help them to structure what needs to be written. So I will give it a thought. There are a few things that I'm currently doing and planning. So I would put this as one more activity in my list to come up with probably a 2 or 3 session webinar series similar to this, where we could get where I would get you all to start preparing a structure for your thesis, for your section by section of your thesis. I think that may be helpful. So that's a good suggestion. Thanks, Vidya. Yeah, I think we could do that for sure. Thanks, Yusuf. All right, and also do subscribe to my YouTube channel. I hope you can get value by following my videos on my channel. And I just hope that you follow these 3 webinars and come up with your own plan for your PhD, depending upon what stage of PhD you are in right now. Uh, Even if you plan for that particular year and you follow that plan, I believe it will be of great help to yourself. And just hope that you all cruise through your PhD without experiencing stress or without being stressed. Okay, so if it does sound like a fantasy, I hope we can make it a reality. All right. On that note, I'd like to say thank you very much. And I look forward to receiving your feedback on this website. And have a good rest of the week. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.